Okay, here we go. I am very nervous. I'm going to start by saying that because it's hard for me to let my voice be heard. The world is constantly screaming at me to shut up, so getting my voice out there is terrifying. I am very terrified. And I also would like to say that I will be reading from something I wrote. A writer. It's part of the day job, and sorry if part of it does sound academic. I will also be playing with cats who want attention. But anyway, let's start. I'm going to introduce myself. I am Brian Johnson, sometimes Brian Johnson Frazier, but that's not from any coupling. That's from I respect both of my parents, and it took both of them to make me, so I use both of their last names. I also respect my heritage from both of them. So I gave myself a hyphenated last name that is a combination of both of their last names. I also go by Grumpy Gay Guy in some circles, like here on YouTube. I have been known to be a bit mouthy and grouchy and crabby and angry, but I figured Grumpy Gay Guy flows a lot better than Angry Gay Guy. But with that said, I wanted to talk about my experiences with, well, for one, male privilege and white privilege. What that means to me, what that means for a lot of us. Wants to get into video? Here's my little camera buddy. But I'm going to go ahead and start reading. He's going to read with me too, look. Let's see. Scroll down, scroll down. Here we go. The first and most prominent memory, again, I'm going to read from something I wrote because I'm a lot better with the written word than the spoken word. Also, it'll take my anxiety from like way the fuck up here to way down here. The first and most prominent memory, no, you can't walk on the laptop. Oh no, my kitty's gone. Anyway, the first and most prominent memory that comes to my mind is the first job that I ever had. I actually really loved this job, honestly. It was fun. I got the hang of it. I could go at my own pace once I learned it. The problem here is that I only got 1 day of training, and this was only my second job ever. I was fresh from high school. I was young. I never had to work. I never had to do anything. I breezed through high school doing nothing. But when I say breezed through high school, I meant I acted like a kid and almost flunked out. But anyway, I digress. I kind of liked it. It moved at a good pace. There wasn't like a billion customers an hour. I could get a handle on it. But it still took me a while. I was still terrified of my own shadow. I should also, well, that's later. I'm going to keep reading. They gave me 1 day of training and they kept saying, well, we can't spare the time. We can't spare the person. Your supervisor has to do this. Your supervisor has to do that. And I can't do this because I have to do this and I have to do that. And that's all I heard. I got 1 day and then I was thrown all by myself in my own department, not knowing where anything was, not knowing how to use the register really, other than computer training. But anyway, fast forward a little bit, I got my bearings. A couple months went by and they started hiring new people. About 3 new people came in. None of them were really noticeable or remarkable in any way, much like myself. And then there was this one woman. She got 2 full weeks of training. She was supposed to be in petites and misses, which are 2 different departments apparently. And she required 2 full weeks. So I kind of was a little bit peeved by that, but I brushed it off. I was like, who cares? Maybe she just really needs it. Keeping in mind that she had admitted, I mean, she had submitted an application. This was her third job that year, and it was only like June. Yeah, June-ish. Maybe a little sooner. And I'm actually trying to ad lib, so. And I finally decided that it was time to cut ties with that job. Oh, I should also mention that she went around bumming painkillers. She would never stay in her department. She was there, she would be scheduled there for like 6 hours, and she would spend only 2 of those hours in her department, and nobody said anything to her. Yet, if I go over to take uh, bed sheets back to the home department because somebody returned them, I get chewed out for walking away from my department or walking away from the register just to give them the bed sheets back that they returned at my register. But she's allowed to spend, what was it, 4 hours out of 6 hours roaming around bumming painkillers from everybody and just chatting wherever, doing whatever. I don't think she actually worked there. She was employed there, but I don't think she actually worked there. But anyway, there was an incident. It's the reason I decided to cut ties and leave. I had noticed that she was allowed to go home. She just said she felt queasy, and then she said she had a headache, and she was allowed to, the management just let her leave. Yeah, well, why don't you go home and get some rest? You've got a big day tomorrow too. You've got to come in early tomorrow. Keep it in mind, I always had to come in early, 2 hours before the store opened every day. So there's that. This was probably, she'd probably come in early a few times. But anyway, she was allowed to go home, keeping in mind that she was laughing, joking, having fun, and a joyous time because her shift was only half over. I think it was a long 9-hour shift. Ooh. Those dreaded 9-hour shifts. And she did like 3-4 hours of it, and then she was like, I feel queasy, I have a bad migraine, I need to go home. She just didn't want to do 9 hours. Keeping in mind it was a little annoying because we only got maybe 30-minute lunch. Some of us we would either get depending on how busy it was, they either gave us one 30-minute lunch or two 15-minute coffee breaks. So, I mean, so she's literally required to work 8.5 out of 9 hours, even though she never really worked. But they let her go home because she said she had a tummy ache. She had a headache. So, again, I was going to say this earlier, but it's more impactful if I mention now that being so scared of everything, as I have always been, I never learned how to drive. I was in my late 20s when I learned how to drive because I was terrified of it. I was in a car wreck. Which made me terrified of the road, terrified of cars. It took a while just for me to sit in the passenger seat with somebody. But I got over that, and then I got over my fears and anxieties, and I eventually learned how to drive. But at this particular time, I was still terrified of it, so I had to walk to work. It was harsh winters and brutal, sweltering summers. And here's me walking to work. Luckily, it was just around the corner at my mall, and it only took a few minutes to walk there. But I sucked it up and walked. My dad would always tell me to push through. He instilled a work ethic in me that, well, his motto is just push through. You gotta do what you gotta do. So there was one harsh winter, the one that It was my deciding factor. I'm done. You don't care about me. You couldn't care less about me, whether I live or die, literally, not being hyperbolic. And then once the rage set in enough, I quit. It started with me walking to work one winter because I didn't have a car. So I walked, and it was just after a big, big, heavy snowfall. And it was super cold out. If I'm not mistaken, I think this was around the polar vortex time. Might have been around that time frame, yes, the polar vortex. Um, so the winters were really freaking cold. And I went, I walked to work. But being so thin and out of shape, I'm 170 right now, but back then I was 115 on a good day. I was normally about 110 ish. So I was thin and out of shape. I was a freaking skeleton. Um, there's hills and curves and swerves and everything, which makes it harder to walk. And I was never really built for that kind of thing. Working out like that. I'd never worked out. I took a flight of stairs every now and then. That was the most I'd ever worked out. So I went to work. By the time I got to work, I don't know, I guess I tried to push myself too hard. There's this bridge that goes over the interstate, and I try to rush past that because, I don't know, in my peripheral vision, seeing cars come at me, even though my brain knows I'm way up here and they're way down here, my peripheral vision still sees cars coming at my direction, and I flinch and freak out. So I just speed walk over the bridge, which makes me winded, and the air is so cold and so dry that it feels like my lungs are literally freezing on the spot. So I couldn't breathe. Coughing felt like knives. I would cough, and I don't know, oh, it was terrible, and that made me lightheaded. So I get in there. I get into work. They see me like nearly dead. I sat there because it had taken, well, because I had not felt well. I was also just getting over being sick too. So that's also what added to it. But I went into work, sat in one of the chairs in the break room, and the manager saw me, and I didn't know if I could do it. Like, I thought I was going to pass out. I wanted to put my head down on the table and just rest, but I sat down in the chair, and the manager gave me half a glass of water, let me rest, but my shift was scheduled to start in 5 minutes. I was not feeling well at all, so I asked if I could just go home because I can't see. My vision is like blurry, and my heart's going a mile a minute. My chest has daggers poking through it because of the ice and the cold. But nope, we're so short-staffed. There's nobody that can cover the job. I'm sorry, but you can't go home. She gave me half a cup of water and didn't let me finish it because my shift had already started. So I took one drink of a glass of water that she gave me to try to pretend to be kind, and then she sent me out there to do my job. And there was a lot of people, of course. And of course, only one person was scheduled to be in my department and home department at any given time. They scheduled 2 people over in all of the women's departments, but in home and menswear, there was only one person. Sometimes it was just me on that whole half of the store. And as soon as I got there, the person, he just canceled out the transaction. He didn't even finish ringing up the damn customer. He just left. He's like, "You're here? Good. Bye." So, wonderful male privilege. My male privilege nearly killed me there. It's, uh, I I couldn't. I decided to focus on. At that time, I was also going through getting my associate's degree. I decided to go ahead and focus on that. I didn't want to work there anymore. They didn't care whether I lived or died. They didn't care about me at all, so I left. I wasn't gonna frickin' die on the damn job just because they want to give some fucking junkie, some woman junkie, a free ride while letting their male employees fucking die. I got it took a few months to get pissed off about it because again I was quite timid and I wasn't outspoken yet. I was nowhere near the grumpy gay guy back then. That didn't come until later. But anyway, I decided to focus on my associate's degree, and that went, I don't know, nothing out of the ordinary with that. It was just a dinky associate's degree from a dinky tiny little junior college in a tinky dinky tiny little town. So I didn't have much. It was uneventful. The part that was eventful came after I got my degree. I figured because it was just a piddly little associate's degree, nobody could say I'm overqualified for anything. My associate's degree in my mind should have just counted for, I don't know, a couple months worth of work experience. I have background in management. My specialty while I was studying was basically bureaucracy. I liked finding the threads and untying the knots that is bureaucracy, and that is my skill. I do put that on resumes, but nobody really cared. I kept getting told that I'm overqualified, kept getting told that I'm underqualified, kept getting told that I don't have enough prior work experience, and that's not. While I believe that a lot of these people did that because of my race and my gender, I don't have any proof. So it's just my personal opinion that I didn't get any of those jobs because I'm white and or male, and people aren't allowed to hire those anymore. Though there was one, it was at Macy's at the mall because I wanted to be a cashier again. You know, it had been almost a full year, I guess, maybe a little over a year since I finished my degree. And I was like, you know what? I'll go ahead and be a cashier again. I'll try to be a cashier. But I was not going to go back to the other place, to Elder Bierman. I was not going to do that because they didn't care about me. So I went and applied at Macy's instead. And it was really weird. There was, I don't know what to call it, double interview, group interview, because there was me and another woman. And I will never, as long I can become senile, I can get dementia, Alzheimer's, and I will never forget this woman. Her hair was like bramble, just white, pale bramble, tied up in a knot, just stringy and brittle, and it looked half dead. Somehow she managed to tie it up into a bun. She was wearing red sweatpants with a red sweatshirt, and there was white paint flecks on all sides of both the pants and the shirt. And she kept doing this thing here, and she kept picking this part of her elbow and jiggling her leg like a mile a minute, which I get that. I do that. Like, there's marks here where I do that. Like, I pick inside of my elbow. I don't know what that's called. There's probably a fancy name for it, but I just call it the inside of my elbow. And I do that. I sit there and pick at it, but she was doing that with just one hand, kind of like this, jiggling her leg up and down, and she looked really nervous, about like me. So again, while she may have looked like a junkie and acted like a junkie, so did I. A lot of people assumed I was a junkie because I was 15 pounds, soaking wet, and always nervous and scared and picking at myself. In fact, I have something called trichotillomania, which, if you can see, most of my beard is gone because I sit there and just pluck out pieces of my beard. Just sit there. When I get nervous, I just pick out pieces. And it's not just beard hair, it's any hair on your body is susceptible to that. But anyway, I went dressed in my favorite dark purple dress shirt, and I freshly ironed my dress slacks. I was wearing a nice tie. I don't remember which one it was because I had like 50. I loved ties. I bought them every chance I could. Every time they would go on sale at Elder Beerman, I would buy another tie. And I just knew that I thought it matched. It probably didn't. Who knows? But anyway, the manager gets in there and he starts talking to us both. He spends about anywhere between 5 and 10 minutes asking us random questions, and he finally concludes. He looks at me and says, "I'm sorry, but you will not be continuing or going any further down the interview process, continuing the interview process," or whatever. He said something like that and shooed me out the door. And then she got up too, but he's like, "No, you can stay. I still have more questions for you." So, again, male privilege. I get shooed out the door while some skanky thought gets the job. Actually, I guess she didn't get the job because I never saw her working there, but that could be because I never went back in. All those other interviews were one-on-one. And after a while, like I said, it had been a little over a year, a little under a year, and I decided, I heard somebody say temp agency, but I was like, nah, I think I'm going to I'm going to try a big kid college. So I applied at Marshall here in my town, and it was kind of hanky-panky and, well, not hanky-panky. It was kind of, I guess, spotty. It took a while because, again, bureaucracy. First, they wanted this documentation, then they had this documentation, then they said they didn't have this documentation, so I had to go and get it, and I couldn't hand deliver it. I wasn't allowed to hand deliver it because then it could be a forgery. So, and I didn't know that because I went there and got the damn document that they wanted. And then it turns out, oh, well, you don't need this one. You have a prior degree. You don't need this documentation. So you literally, that took like 2 or 3 months of me tracking down this fucking paperwork. And they had in front of them on my thingy, associate's degree. They saw that, and then some other woman there at administration, she's like, you don't need this. I don't know why you went and got this documentation. You have an associate's degree. You're in, and you skipped first year seminar. Which pissed me off to no end. But again, I still didn't make a fuss. I got in. I was happy that they let me in. I mean, I had graduated with honors, so I didn't see anything. It might have been a pinky little tiny junior college from a tiny town, but I did graduate with honors. And things seemed to be going up. That's also around the time that I met Rob. I loved him so much with everything that I had. And I don't know, I would have done anything for him, gone anywhere. But on the outside looking in, we fought a lot. I don't know. He was an alcoholic and struggled with that a lot, and he would do things to put himself at risk or put me at risk or put others at risk, and I didn't like that, and we would argue a lot because I wasn't old enough or mature enough at the time to know how to handle that situation rationally. But we were together. Things seemed to be going my way. Things seemed to be looking up. I was doing good at my first semester. I did good with grades and everything. I was happy in a relationship that I found myself wanting to stay in, somebody I could be with forever. Things were finally looking up. And then 2013 happened. Rob died. I I was broken all over, but I still had stuff to do. I still had papers to turn in, papers to write. I still had homework to do. I still had quizzes to study for. So I tried to push through, but it didn't really work. My brain was still messed up. So I asked my professors, I only had 3 at the time, if I could take a week off and stay home and just grieve. And 2 of them said, yeah, just let me know and we'll work with you, blah, blah, blah. Just take some time, grieve, get better. And then comes the third. Let's see, how did I describe her? How did I describe her? She is a newly hired, overly eager young woman with a snarky attitude complex, is how I described her. She looked at me as blankly as she could, with her nose kind of in the air. I fail to see how that's my problem. I was stunned. I told her that Rob had died and I wanted to stay home, and that's what she replied. I fail to see how that's my problem. I find that there are very few things that solidify in my memory, but that is one of those other things that I will never forget. Like the woman in paint-stained sweats. I will never forget what she looked like, how she sounded. I fail to see how that's my problem. And after a while, I guess she realized what she said, and she followed it up with, if you miss class, you miss in-class discussions, and those can't be made up. You will have to forfeit the grade for those. She then picked up her folder and walked out the door. So, I hated her. That's not the end of hers. That is not the end of my story for her. In fact, my story for her goes on and on and on. But instead, I will just mention a couple more incidents with her and move on, because there's a lot to talk about. There was another instance around Halloween, about a month after Rob died. It was getting close to Halloween, and she liked to start the class with a general non-literature related discussion. So she asked, what was your favorite Halloween costume? She went around the room, everybody answered, and I forget most of what I said, but I remember telling her, I remember being ashamed of it being, of me being outed as a video game nerd. So I kind of altered how I said it. I said it was a favorite character of mine who looked like a geisha. I didn't say video game character, I just said character, so she would think anime or TV show or something. But she looked like a geisha. The character I'm referring to, I don't remember her name. She was on one of the Samurai Warrior games, and her weapon was a beautiful pink parasol. And I loved that character so much. She was my favorite. There was another one with this little ball on a string toy in that same game. And that was her weapon. But I decided to learn how to sew to make the costume of the one with the parasol, because it seemed the easiest. I mean, how much do you really need to learn how to make a kimono? It seemed the easiest at the time. And that's what I told her. I just simply said it was my favorite character who resembles a geisha or something like that. And then she looked at me. Let's see, how did I describe this? I described it perfectly in here. She tilted her head forward slightly. She looked directly at me head on and said, "You're a man, so you may not realize this, but that's cultural appropriation and that's racist." She then proclaimed in front of the whole class, nose still stuck in the air, like some superhero for the downtrodden, and a man impersonating a woman is also sexist. She watched her language because a man impersonating a woman is not linguistically the same as a man who dresses like a woman. There's a big difference. So I think she did that so she could rebut any arguments that she called drag queen sexist. Because, again, she knew that I'm gay. I told her about my boyfriend that died. I ended up not finishing the course. I filed a complaint, which was thrown in the trash. The department chair, a woman, she took notes. She pulled up her chair clothes. She did something with her glasses like that, and then she looked at me dead on and got her pencil out or pen out, clicked it, and wrote down some notes. And at the end of the meeting, she just tore it out of the little notepad, wadded it up, tossed it into the trash can beside her, and she was like, "I'm going to level with you. Right now, this is just your word against hers, and she's just a brand new professor here at this college." So nothing was done. And I just went on. The big experience that I could drone on about is about how I believe that professor told women in that class with me to stay away from me because I'm a sexual predator to women and that I'm only pretending to be gay. I don't know why she hated me so intensely, but she hated me. I had this one friend, we would talk after class, well, we would wait for each other and just gab after class while she walked to her next class. I didn't have one after that. That was the end of my day, but she had one more class after that, and we would talk and gab and joke. But one day, that professor asked her to stay behind, and that's the last I saw of her. Well, not the last. A couple days later, about a week later in the course, I had waited up for her, and she had this binder and book, and she clutched it close to her chest like this. She's like, "Why did you wait for me?" Like, just wanted to talk about what we were talking about before, because we were talking about grad school, what we intend to do when we finish our bachelor's degree. So she clutched her books close to her chest, and she knew that I would walk with her, so she started speed walking to her next class. I found out a while later that she had heard that I'm a sexual predator. And the weird thing is, we were both at the beginning of our English program, and I never saw her again after that class. That pissed me off to no end. Then there was the feminist group. I was sitting in the student center one day. I was actually a member of the feminist group, but I left shortly after this because this was around the time that my friend had, I don't know, somehow suddenly got scared of me. But I kind of like how I have described it here. I gotta find my place. They were discussing rape, and about 20 minutes into their deliberation, there was two girls and one guy. I recognized the two girls from the feminist group, and I'm guessing the guy was one of their boyfriend or something. And they were discussing, I don't know, and then they got onto the subject of rape. And after a while, they finally, one of the women proudly proclaimed, as if given an epiphany, rape is any unwanted penetration of a woman by a man. She went on to explain that this included her personal space, meaning that if a man stands too close to a woman, like when they're crossing the street or standing in line at the grocery store, that, and if she gets uncomfortable, that's rape. She's defining that as rape because she feels uncomfortable because a man penetrated her. It was a metaphoric penetration and it's her personal space, but it is the penetration of a woman by a man, and that's illegal. She went on to say that in a fury, getting red and heated in the face, she went on to say that male privilege is the reason that men don't get arrested for that kind of rape. Ooh, she was furious about it too. I listened to the conversation to its conclusion. I don't recall much more after that because I felt uncomfortable. I thought this bitch was going to accuse me of rape just sitting right here in the chair behind them. The chairs were back to back, facing opposite directions. I was looking outside. They were looking towards the fireplace in Marshall Student Center. And I wanted to leave. I felt uncomfortable. I was that close. I was inside her personal space, and I was going to get arrested. She was going to fucking arrest me for goddamn rape. So I stayed and listened for a few more minutes, and I left. Another thing I kept getting told in the damn feminist group is, as a man, I need to do better. At what? I don't do anything. I'm literally, right now, and literally back then, was so terrified of my own shadow, I don't do anything. I'm also a lifelong pacifist, so I don't hurt anyone. I go out of my way to not hurt anyone. I get spiders, I take them and I scoop them up in a cup and put them back outside. I don't hurt anyone. I don't hurt anything. So, a random note to all you women out there. It is not my fault if you feel uncomfortable around me. That's your hang-up, not mine. I did nothing to you. You've got your own trauma you need to figure out before you blame me for shit. That's another part of my male privilege. It's now everything wrong in your life is my fault specifically because I'm the closest man to you. Wrong, bitch. See a fucking therapist. I am. Well, that brings me to the end of my Marshall bitch rants. For now, follow me on social media. There's a lot more where that came from about Marshall. I fucking hate Marshall. But anyway, I stumbled through. There's something that's not in here. I have to make a note to include that. There was one professor in one of my courses that I really hated. Not because she was mean to me or rude to me. She was really polite to everyone in the class. But when the final grades came out, she altered her grade book. Anyone who was black and or female got a 1-letter boost. And anyone who was white male, me, got a 1-letter deduction. And her justification for this was something along the lines of she's trying to help them. They're overshadowed or overlooked more often in a collegiate setting. So she's helping level the playing field. So she literally hacked away at my GPA because I'm white. by her own admission. She decided to cut my GPA for being white and male. Yay, male privilege has been my friend so far. So that brings us to the end of that, which brings us to the beginning of what I call the year of hell. I didn't get my creative writing degree. I had to take a fucking Regents because they wouldn't let me get my creative writing degree. More about that in my social media. I bitch about that a lot. But anyway, I applied for everything, every kind of job, every job possible, janitor up to store manager. I applied for fucking journalist, article writer, whatever, anything writing related. I even applied to be a fucking mechanic, and I don't even know anything about cars. It was literally the bottom of the barrel. Actually, it was a cup that I had like slips of paper with jobs in. And I just applied for a mechanic because why the fuck not? I mean, it was there. It's something to apply for. I went on Indeed and Monster and a couple other ones and wrote down started typing in different things and wrote down job titles, and I would just pick one and apply for it. I wrote them on a slip of paper, put them in a thingy, picked one out, and applied for it. And nobody hired me. Except this time, being armed with a bachelor's degree. A Regent's technically a bachelor's. It's literally the only thing it's allowed to be classified as is a bachelor's. But I went and applied for everything everywhere, and I was told no by everyone. Again, I got oh no, you're overqualified. Oh no, you have too much education. And then there was a couple that said, you don't have enough previous work experience. College is no match for real world experience. There was one or two that said that. And then a good 4, 5, 6 of them just bluntly told me, I'm sorry, we don't hire men. That would make our customers uncomfortable. Hiring a man would make our customers uncomfortable, so we can't do it. We would lose business. And then there was one black bitch who interviewed me. I'm sorry, but I can't in good conscience hire a white man. Yay, white privilege. So after this had been about 9 months, 8 or 9 months into the year of hell. So I started to apply I went ahead. I remembered somebody mentioning Manpower, the temp agency in town. So I went there. I did everything they told me to do, put in whatever, and again, got the runaround a few times, back and forth, left and right, up and down, front ways, back ways, upside down, left side out. I don't know. They took me everywhere. And after about 3 months of me bugging them, asking them, they finally said something. Let's see if I can find it here. See if I actually wrote that down. No, I don't see it here. Anyway, she told me something along the lines of all of the contracts we have are women's jobs, and we can't put a man in them. The only job that they would give men is, I don't know what the place is, but it's an assembly line worker at Alcon. I don't know what Alcon is, but it's the only thing they would give me. They don't give men anything else. And I'm especially frustrated because there was one job that's literally walking distance from my house. I live in Barboursville. My mother lives in Canova. It's walking distance for me, but like a 30-minute drive for her. Who do they give the job to? Her. 10-minute walk for me, 30-minute drive for her. I'm a man, so they gave it to my mom. And she didn't even want that one. If I remember correctly, she didn't even want that one. I'm going to go ahead and try to wrap this up. It's been 45 minutes. There's a lot more to say. There's a lot more to say. And I am going to find some place to publish the written version of this online. If anybody knows anywhere where I can publish the full written version, please let me know. Because I want this to be published as I get done, as I've moved to finishing my master's degree. I need to start thinking about getting myself published so that I can get myself recognized as a writer. Let's see. Here we go. The next thing, my health. I started to get increasingly sick. I don't know what happened. As you can tell, my teeth are fucking atrocious. That's on me. That is all me. I had a relaxed parent who didn't force me to brush my teeth every night. So as a child, I didn't brush my teeth every night. And I let them get bad. And I figured, well, the dentists will take care of it. I don't need to care about my teeth. That's the dentist's job. And there might have been one or two jobs where I was passed over because my teeth are so terrible looking. I'm willing to admit that. But I went and I wanted to get dentures because these are permanently stained with everything. No matter what I do, no matter what I try, what products I try, there's no whitening whatever. There's no fixing the broken teeth. I'm missing everything from like back here. 6 teeth back here, 6 teeth back here. So I'll just here. And I was going to try to get dentures, and something happened. I got sick. I was getting slowly worse. It took a full year. Well, again, it took several months. The year of hell was over by this point, I should say, because one of my friends had managed to, well, not one of my friends, my best friend and a man I was currently seeing at the time. Both of them had helped me get into grad school. Without Midnight or Daniel, I would not be in grad school right now. They pulled together money to help me pay all of the fees that you need to pay. But I digress. Anyway, I was content. The year of hell was over. I was working on my degree. I figured I'd wait until I got a little bit into the degree program before I start looking for gainful employment again, if I tried. And I got progressively worse. Like my nausea. It went from like once a week to practically every day, and it was about a period of a few months. And I went to the doctor. She came in. She was some slender, blonde, I don't know. And she talked to me for a few minutes. She did a physical exam, although she palpated my abdomen, took my blood pressure, did a couple other things, and then ordered blood work, and then sent me home. The whole thing took maybe 15 minutes. We waited in the waiting room for a good while, of course, but getting the blood work and talking to that doctor, all of it combined was maybe 15 minutes tops. And she dismissed me. Everything looks fine, she said after the results came back a few days later. Everything looks fine. Again, nobody would take me seriously, but every time I would eat, every time I would drink, it would come right back up. Well, I can't drink that. And then on my 30th birthday, I started puking up water. I tried to take a drink of water and it came back up. My abdomen felt like somebody was taking a chainsaw to it. So we went back to the doctor. She took me to a different clinic. We get in there. It's a rugged-looking middle-aged Indian man. he spoke, I don't know, between Indian and English, not that broken English where you can only understand like one every few words, but like I his accent was prominent enough to know that he's, I guess, not born in America. He came here after he got his degree or something. I'm not sure. But he talked with me, and as soon as he came in, he looked at how I was sitting, how I was hunched over, and I could just tell the look in his eyes. He's like, I know exactly what's wrong with you. Well, I think that's what he thought. He looked at me and he had this look on his face like, yeah, I know exactly what's wrong. So he talked with me for maybe 5 minutes. He did the same thing, palpate my abdomen. I winced because it hurt. And I went and I got, he wrote something so that I could be admitted to the hospital. And after 2 days in the hospital, I found out that I have something called C. diff. But not like full on C. diff. There was something, they said I either tested positive for the mutagen but not the antigen, or I tested positive for the antigen but not the mutagen. And I still technically don't know completely what it is, but I know that it ruined me inside. I was given a 10-day cycle of something called vancomycin and then scheduled a follow-up with a GI at an outside clinic by somebody who was not the Indian doctor that had seen. So I do the regimen, I take the thing, go follow all the steps. They gave me this big intricate paper, step by step by step, day by day by day, and I followed it to the letter. I joined a support group and asked them questions like, what can I eat? When can I eat this? When can I eat that? And they're basically like, don't know. Food is a no-go with C. diff, practically. Mostly because when you have it, nothing stays down and it hurts a lot worse coming back up. There has to be something else. Appetite aids, anti-nausea medication. By the time this was all said and done, they basically wrote me a prescription for like cancer level anti-nausea meds because mine is so bad and it's every day. To this day, it's every day. But I finish the thing. I do what the paper says to do, and I go to the appointment with the GI. She spends a few minutes talking to me. She clicks on the computer, looks at the results, sees that they're clean. She's like, this is squeaky clean, and this is squeaky clean, and this is fine. She's like, so she ordered a stool sample because she had to order a stool sample. I found out a little while later, a couple months later, that she never actually tested the sample. She took it. It didn't look like C. diff stool, so it couldn't be C. diff stool. So she tossed it without testing it. And all I get is a little postcard looking thing with like 3 words on it saying sample tested negative, even though it didn't test negative because she never fucking tested it. So I go back a couple of times because I'm still sick. And here I am getting sicker. And, I mean, here's all these people online telling me that it is extremely rare for a person's C. diff to clear up with 1 round of those of the special antibiotics. Deficit, Flagyl, vancomycin, FMT. It is extremely rare for anybody to be fully recovered after just 1 round. Also, there's no such thing as recovered. Your body's screwed up forever. I go back to her one day, and yet again, I'm dismissed, and she levels with me. I know I say that phrase because she's like, I'm going to level with you. You're young and you're a man, so it's highly unlikely that you have C. diff. In fact, the way that she said it sounded like she was doubting that I had C. diff at all. She was skeptical that I was. I think she disagreed with the diagnosis. I want. I'm 55 minutes. There's so much more to stay still. I'm just. I'll just go ahead and finish by saying that. Well, there's one thing I want to mention. My best friend, Midnight. She's also white. She gets. She got picked on and bullied in middle school and high school by black people all the time. But people like us aren't allowed to retaliate because they have a zero tolerance policy for bullying. They always had a zero tolerance policy. I think when my parents and grandparents were in elementary, all these schools had zero tolerance policy. But that's only for white kids. That's only for boys. They her nephew would go to school and come home with a black eye or bruises all over his body because black kids jumped him for no reason. And it's a mixture of their parents and the media blaming all white people for everything that's wrong in this country. It's the fault of every white person. So their young children hear this, and so they see a white person at school. It's your fault. My mommy's life is ruined. So they beat the shit out of a 6-year-old. A 6-year-old white kid. Because their parents are pissed off because the media is telling them to be pissed off at white people. So he's messed up. He's in therapy because he doesn't know what he's supposed to do. He's not allowed to defend himself. He's been suspended several times. The only reason they haven't expelled him is because he's got a handicap of some sort that prevents them from expelling him. They can't expel him. He gets bullied all the time and he's not sure what to do about it. So he's in therapy because he has all this displaced rage, this inner rage bubbling up. He's not allowed to do anything about it because, well, at that age, at his age, like I think he's 13 or 14, he is taught that, well, men are bad and evil and it's only a matter of time before they release their fury. Or white people are the devil. White people are Satan. White people are the thing that's wrong with this country. So he just sits there and just keeps his rage, anger bottled up while he has to sit there and let them beat the shit out of him. This happened to my friend Midnight too. She was bullied by black people who were pissed off at white people. This happens all the fucking time, all over the country. But no, the only thing you all want to care about is one white cop killed one black kid. Y'all don't give a shit about those of us who are bullied on the daily. My dad has been passed over for job promotions because he's too white and too male. When I was working at Walmart, I wanted to stay there and work in the kids department doing, just working with toys because I liked that. And stocking shelves and shit. And I got passed over for some black woman who couldn't even do the job that they had hired her to do. But they can't fire her. They're not allowed. She's black and a woman. She's a black woman. They are not allowed to fire her. Do you know how quickly that Walmart would burn down if they fired her? Seriously. But that's the end of this tale. That's the end of this rant and rave and tirade. I'll probably make another video at some point. This was cathartic, if nothing else.